Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Levi Greenacres.
The first time I was visited by God in a dream, I was 21 years old, and I had had a couple of really long nights, and it was revealed to me, just as revealed to so many people, if you've ever driven through the South or through the Midwest, that God is love. And love, it was all further revealed, is that force that binds particles of energy together, and it binds people and things and world events together. So after I had that experience, I decided to get ordained. And when I got my ordainment papers, I had this dream that I was visited out back of a roadhouse in the 1960s, and Booker T and the MG's Green Onions was playing. And the back door opens, and this guy comes out. He's an aged beatnik with a white goatee. He's got a turtleneck sweater, and he comes bopping over, and he snaps his fingers real cool, and a bar stool appears, and he parks himself on that, and he says, "Hey, Levi, I'm God, and I want to thank you for taking the time to get ordained. So there's some things that you ought to know. One is that certain people have this idea about me as this old guy with a white beard, and I give out advice and stone tablets on mountaintops and such, rods into serpents, things like that. And it's not your job as a man of the cloth to talk anybody out of that or talk them into anything. It's just your job, just like it's everybody's job here on my green earth, to do the best you can with what you got. So I know we've got this idea to fix up your motorcycle and preach your way across the country for gas money, and that's cool. Just be cool while you're doing it." And with that, he stands up, snaps his fingers real cool again, bar stool disappears, and he walks back into the roadhouse into the heavenly sounds of the Hammond B3. And when I wake up, I am elated. God has spoken directly to me in a dream. And that's not something that I know a lot of people immediately have had that experience. So I think, wow, this is it. This is mystical shit. So for the next 2 days, I'm feeling pretty righteous, and I have a fairly high opinion of myself, so I try not to cross the line into self-righteous, but I'm feeling pretty good. And I take it in stride when 2 weeks later, I'm visited by God a second time in a dream. And it's not quite such a cool beatnik experience this time. Instead, we're in outer space, and God appears as a ultraviolet nebula. And in the center of the ultraviolet nebula is a glowing eyeball made out of fire. And being on fire, it has no eyelid, and it cannot blink. Instead, pulses with fury and menace. And God says one very short thing. It's all business. He says, "Levi, stay away from women." Now, when I wake up, I'm not elated. I'm very confused. Because at 21, I don't know a whole lot about life or how it works. But I do know one thing with absolute certainty, that there's no way God put women on earth for me to stay away from. So I take that confusion and advice to work with me. I've just been promoted at work at a corporate coffee shop to close and shift supervisor. I take that pretty seriously. And if you've ever worked in corporate food service, there's a few things about it. The big thing is that there's a lot of rules. Everything about your day is regulated or ruleified in some way. So everything about how to greet your customers, how to make the drinks, how to groom yourself, which I really slacked off on back then. And also the big rule above all rules is the non-fraternization policy. So what that means is that between you and your coworkers, while you're on the clock, you are a team, and you will sweat blood for each other and do whatever it takes to make a lot of money for some dude who lives really far away and you're never going to meet. But after work, there's no drinking, there's no dancing, there's no Dylan doing it or dating. So it is with a very heavy heart that I remember this rule when I'm introduced to my new closing shift coworker, and her name is Sonia. And Sonia is beautiful. And she's not the kind of beautiful that most people in this day and age are prone to appreciate. She's very tall and very wide in the shoulders. She fills out her work apron really nice. And when she turns around, it is apparent to me that she makes poly cotton blend work pants look really good. which is not a mean feat if you've ever tried it. But she's stacked like a 13th century fishwife. Very stout, very sturdy. Like her personality says, I'm upbeat, I'm happy all the time, I'm very kind and giving. And what her ample body says to me is, I am a fertile garden which you can plant your most private fantasy of heartache. So I am tempted. I want to fraternize. I want to do more than fraternize, but I feel like fraternizing is a pretty good place to start in the perfect world. So having the new promotion, I try to do the right thing, and I'm all business, like God wanted me to be. And so we talk about work stuff, like how to make the drinks, how to stock stuff, how to live off of day-old pastries in a way that your bosses don't find out about, which is a really essential thing to getting through any food service job. After a couple of weeks, though, she opens up. She's got the hang of things, and she starts telling me about her life. And she's a really good girl. She was brought up super Christian. All of her family and her school friends are super Christian. She's going to a Jesuit college to study urban ministry and volunteers at a youth outreach center. And, when she tells me this, her eyes get really big and she gets really excited, and her giant full lips get into this big smile, which accentuates and is also accentuated by the faintest Italian mustache, which makes me want her even more. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I've got it. I can tell her something about me that will turn her off of me, and then I won't have to feel bad about constantly lusting after her. So I say, well, I'm a bit of a religious fan myself. And so I tell her about being visited by God in a dream twice. And it kind of backfires. She doesn't get turned off by that at all. In fact, she goes a step further and says, well, let me tell you a little bit about me. And it turns out that she talks to God all the time. Now, many of you might have talked to God in a way that's sort of like this. Oh, God, I'm sorry I drank so much. If you let me get through this, I won't do it again. This is not the kind of talking to God that she did. She would have regular conversations, almost daily, according to her, where she would say, hey, God, I'm having this problem. And God would respond, yes, Sonia, tell me all about it. Well, I was thinking about this thing at school or at work or in life. And God would say, yes, Sonia, tell me all about it. I'm going to drop everything and talk directly just to you. We'll get through it together. That's so weird to me and so hot. How do you not find that hot? Was my dilemma. And so I'm like, oh, well, put my foot in it, but we'll play it cool. So after that big admission, I gather it's not something that she mentions to everyone. She starts telling me all kinds of stuff. So for a good girl, she's kind of a bad girl, which also I find really hot. Like at 19, she's done some drinking. She doesn't feel bad about it. She's had some premarital sex enthusiastically. She's got a tattoo of a cross. And it's in a private place, so her friends and family don't all have to know about it. And it's toward the second thing that she starts really talking about her premarital sex. She's got a partner, and it's fun, but it's not really exciting, and she wants to try all this stuff. And she's heard about all the things you can get up to, but she hasn't done very much. Apparently, there's a lot of missionaries in a Jesuit college, and that's a position of choice. So I'm like, well, Sonia, I'm your boss. I'd like to stay being your boss. So here's what I'm going to do. Like, here's the middle ground. I will recommend a couple of books and a couple of websites from this brand new thing they call the internet. And you check that out and apply it to your life as you see fit. But most of all, whatever you want to get up to, just be open and honest about it, and the right person will say, yeah, let's try that. So she takes that advice to heart, and so she starts telling me about her research. And that sort of turns into, I heard about this thing, I want to try it with you. Now, at first I'm like, I'm flattered, maybe more than a little curious, but I'm still your boss. And she persists and persists to the point, and I'm a man, flesh and blood. I'm also 21 years old. I don't have a lot better to do. And finally I say, okay, like, let's try going. You're not old enough to drink, so let's try coffee and see what happens there outside of a coffee shop that we both work at. So coffee kind of turns into dinner, turns into making out a little bit, and that turns into fooling around in her car in the front seat, and fooling around in my car in the back seat, and fooling around in my house. And it's good. It's really good. I have plucked the forbidden fruit from the garden of the fertile garden of my most private fantasy of heartbreak. And so she's like, well, what else can we do? Like, she's a little self-conscious about her size. So most of the things that we do at my house are in the dark. So I don't know if it's angels or demons trying to claw their way out of her and onto me, but they were successful. They latched on and they didn't want to turn loose. She was very curious. She wanted to turn over every stone and leave no stone unturned. And so finally I was like, all right, well, to spice things up, you don't need a big budget. You just need a vivid imagination and a willingness to make it happen. So we started taking trips to the all-night drugstore. And at the all-night drugstore, we got some lotions, some dog toys, little rubber bones and collars and leashes, and one of my personal favorites, the feather duster. And we put them all to work. And it was good. And at some point, in the back of my head, when I didn't have my mouth full and was distracted, I was like, Sonia is a good girl. This can't really last. Nothing this awesome really ever lasts. I wanted it to, but I knew that it wouldn't. So one day, it's just about Christmas time. And Christmas in corporate coffee sucks. Everyone sucks at Christmas in corporate coffee. And it's worse for me because I'm not a big fan of Christmas music. So when I hear for like the 15th time in a day Bruce Springsteen singing that, better be good for goodness sake, better be good for goodness, it just fucking kills me. And so Sonia, on the other hand, is really excited. It's like, that's the birthday of the guy that she admires. And she's talking about it, and it makes her really happy and shiny in that way that I find very attractive, like Christmas dinners and being with her family and all the stuff at church. And I'm thinking about her stockings. So one day right around Christmas, she comes to me and she's like, hey, we need to talk. And in the whole history of relationships, when someone says, hey, we need to talk, it's never to say like, I bought you pudding and here's a bag of cash that you can spend however you want. No questions asked. So when she says, hey, we need to talk, I'm ready for it. I've known for a while this talk is coming. And she says, so I had a talk with God, usually also a bit of a weenie shrinker. And she says, so I was talking to God, and he told me that I had to make a choice. I either have to live a life of pure good, go back to college, focus on my studying and all of my friends and family and outreach and the what have yous, or I can give up my life of pure good and have deliciously decadent hot sex with you from now until time ends. And in that moment, time sort of stops for me. And in the moment of time stopping, I see possible futures laid out in various paths. And the most likely path is like months of really hot, dirty, I just twisted a good schoolgirl sex. You can't buy that in Thailand. I mean, you could try. You might get close. But after that wears off, the novelty of that, then it's like depression, drinking turns into harder drugs, turns into like the eventual, we both lose our jobs, we're living out of one of our cars, therapy fails, there's an abortion along the way. It doesn't look good. And when I snap back in reality, there she is, like she's laid it all out for me and she's trembling, waiting for me to say, yes, Sonia, of course. That is the logical choice. But I'm a little weird at 21, but I know the right thing to do. And I say, well, I can't do that, Sonia. I can't let you do that. Half the reason I like you is that you are a maniac in bed because you are on fire for a guy who I don't totally believe exists. Really on fire. So, no, don't choose me. I mean, go back to God, and you'll eventually find somebody who really likes you the way that you are, and not just like a dirty, unspeakably delicious and dirty novelty. And she's upset by that. She's like, well, let me get this straight. I just chose you over God, and you say no thank you. Asshole. And she runs off into the night crying. So I feel pretty bad about that. And also, like, I feel bad for her, and I feel bad for me because I'm likely to get discovered at work at some point. So when I go to work the next day, my boss is waiting outside the shop for me. And it doesn't look good. That's like your pregnant girlfriend's dad waiting outside with a shotgun. Look. And he says, before you go in, just want to tell you that Sonia quit today. And I say, oh, really? I just saw her last night. Did she happen to mention why she's not with the company anymore after so brief a time? It's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, she did. She said it was because of you. Now, I didn't ask a lot of questions, but I should fire your ass right now. That's the rules around here. You should be done. As it happens, I don't have anyone to replace you, and I'm not coming in to work at night. But I will give you this piece of advice, and if you don't choose to heed it in the future, it is your ass. And that advice, son, is don't shit where you eat. Strangely, that guy got fired 2 weeks later, and I didn't, which I consider nothing short of a Christmas miracle. So while I did eventually learn the lesson of not shitting where you eat and dating people that you work with, I never did get around to taking that advice from God about staying away from women. Thank you.